Welcome, everyone, to the second edition of the Furry Valley Podcast. Today, we will be discussing an issue that affects all of us, directly or indirectly: mental health. Specifically, the crossover between mental health and the furry fandom. If you, the listener, are suffering or need help, we implore you to speak to someone to share your burden and to receive the guidance you need. Never suffer in silence or isolation. You deserve love and support. Every country has helplines available, and you should not be afraid to call these in times of need. I'm joined today by two lovely guests, the adorable Necro, who co-leads our anime and movie night teams, and the wonderful Clementine, who has become a much-loved community member in the 2 months since she joined. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great today.
Good.
Good. You sound very excited to be here, Necro.
I'm tired.
You're tired. I'm tired too. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, Necro, first?
Well, I'm a junior in college right now. I'm going for my my bachelor's in animal science, and hopefully later I will get my master's so I can study IBD in animals and hopefully transfer what I learned there to humans, because it runs in my family, so it's really important to me.
Cool. That's pretty awesome. Do you like your degree?
Oh yeah, I
Awesome.
love working with animals.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense as a furry, I guess. Well, what's your sort of history with Furry Valley? Because you've been here for a while. People here might not know you. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh boy. I joined 5 or 6 years ago, I think, and that was way
Yeah.
back when we were still a Skype group, and solely focused for RuneScape. I just remember going on like the RuneScape forums after I left my previous clan, searching for like furry clans or something, and I found Furry Menagerie, which is now Furry Valley. Left for 3 years, came back, and here we are.
Cool. Awesome. And then how about you, Clementine? Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh well, there's not a lot. I'm just interested in nursing and writing. I've been studying both for a while. Nursing for just about a year now. Writing much more. It's been my passion since about I don't know, maybe since I was 12, if that means anything. I'm from Texas. Uh, Other than that, I wouldn't say there's a lot more. I don't really have much of a story behind much of what I do. Uh, if that makes any sense, of course.
So you mentioned you're a writer. You've written for a number of years. Have you completed any sort of novels or published anything? What sort of stuff do you write? Tell us about that.
Well, usually my I wouldn't say business model, but my model would just mainly be to it's been more of a hobby recently. I've been taking up commissions lately.
Okay.
I can't really stick with anything long enough to write a novel about it.
I see. So it's sort of shorter pieces which you get commissioned, like art commissions essentially, but for writing. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And is that exclusively furry or?
Really, furry or not, I'll write just about anything. Just
Cool.
put it in front of me as long as it, doesn't clash with my morals.
Awesome. And for the nursing stuff, is that something you're in college for? You want to do for a profession or just interest?
Yes, for college. I go to college in Dallas,
Okay.
a community college, and that's what I'd like to pursue later on. Slightly as a backup if I don't ever get around to writing a novel or a series, but
Yeah.
for the moment, yes.
Cool. Oh, that's very interesting. It must be an amazing career to be an author. Could you imagine being like J.K. Rowling? How
I would
cool would
hate
that
that.
be? You think? Why would you hate it?
Uh, I can't really deal with fame. I don't like being out in public and just people.
Oh, I see. So you'd be one of these people who has sort of fake name they write with, and no one knows who it actually is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get you. That's fair enough. So if you guys are happy to talk about it, what experience do you personally have with mental health issues, particularly in relation to the furry fandom, but also more generally, whatever you're comfortable talking about.
Well, I guess it starts with my family because I know, like mental, we've got like a lot of mental disorders. I don't want to say that. That sounds like a terrible word. It basically depression, uh, and anxiety, both run. It runs on heavily on my mom's side, and then um, alcoholism and suicide run on my dad's side. Pretty apparent, and so it clashes. And uh, all since I was little, I've always dealt like my sister. She's got real bad depression and anxiety um, and all that. Like if you could, she's got learning disability. She learns half as fast as everyone else, and maybe even slower. But uh, like I've always been accustomed to. I guess I've always been around it. I guess is what I'm trying to say because I know when my sister, when she was off her meds, it was particularly um, tough, I guess, because she'd talk about, suicide, wanting to kill herself because of all these people that were bullying her. And I've always had to tell her time and time again that, if these people are willing to do this stuff to you, like they're not worth hanging around. And, um, she's got such a loving family. I love her. She's living with my older sister right now, um, out about an hour north of me. So, I'm not far away. I can always visit her.
Yeah. You make her feel loved and taken care of. That's good. That's good.
Yeah. And that's like the most important thing is, it can be family or it can be a friend or it can be, um, basically anyone. Just find one person that and stick by them that treats you right. Because I know I've had people like that in and out of my life back in junior high, I guess, or uh, go back to elementary school, I guess, because I went to a Catholic school for 2.5, 3 years before I transferred out because I had no friends. The students there would bully me, and then the teachers wouldn't do anything about it. So I came home crying almost basically every day. On top of the fact that it really wasn't like the type of school that it was. It's not really for me. But like um, like after I transferred out, everything got like a lot better. I guess at least a little bit because the teachers, like I'd still get a little bullied by students, but the teachers would definitely do something about it. So that was
good.
a lot
That's
better.
good.
And I guess I learned to trust in like people with higher authority. I guess because like you can't escape people being mean to you and everything. Like that's it's not possible. And
it's sort of how you deal with it and how those around you help you deal with it, I suppose.
And I would always go to like the guidance counselor or even my student advisor back in high school, and they'd always solve everything. And um, when I went to junior high, that's when I really found my group of friends. And we were so close, so close. Like students would try to come up to us, even groups of students, and try and take a pick at us, and we'd stand up for each other, and we'd never back down. And like that's when I say you need to find someone like that. That's the person you need to find.
So people who take care of you. Well, what about you, Clementine? What's your experience with this? If you're comfortable talking about it.
I'm definitely comfortable talking about it. My mother suffers from multiple sclerosis, among other things. Um, I'm not sure you know what that is.
I know, but if you want to explain for our
Yeah,
viewers
I
if
mean
you want.
it's fine. People can look it up.
Okay.
uh, Other than that, my family's got a long running line of narcissistic personality disorder. Uh, among other things, like probably depression and alcoholism runs deep in there. Um, we don't completely know because my grandfather was adopted, uh, but that's about the gist of it. I have a couple things myself. My life hasn't probably been as affected as severely or as powerfully as Necro's here. Uh, just simply because because I've never really learned anything else really, since just about everyone in my family has got something wrong with them, and it's basically just been a game of roulette with every new family member.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that must be not a fun game of roulette, I suppose. Gosh, goodness.
Yeah.
Um, do you do you find that you cope all right on a day-to-day basis with the sort of stuff? You sort of found your own coping mechanisms, or
Not really. I don't really have coping mechanisms whenever it comes to something I'm not happy with in my life.
okay,
Um, I'm one of those people that can very much just bear a burden and go about with my life like that. Um,
yeah.
Me myself, I've been living with gender dysphoria for maybe 5, 6 years now.
Do you think that as time has progressed, you've found it easier to deal with?
Very much so.
Okay. And do you think that the furry fandom has helped you with that?
Exponentially, yeah.
Good, good. Okay. Hmm. In what ways do you think it's helped you?
I think it's really just been just a place of acceptance. I say place, but it's really more of a group of people.
Yeah,
Um, but that's basically just what got me through it because there's not a lot of people in my life, in the real life, that I would probably consider, going to first thing after that, or people I
yeah.
trust after the fact. Yeah.
I guess it comes down to sort of what Necro was saying of having a small number, a small group of people, or indeed a large group of the furry community who will be there of you and be there for you and take care of you with whatever you're suffering with, whatever you feel uncomfortable with. A lot of people in our last podcast we discussed towards the end about this phenomena of cat cafes, which is for those of you who don't know, there are businesses which are opening where you can go and get a cup of coffee, and then they have a load of cats that sort of live in the cafe, and you sort of stroke them and just chill out with your friends. Or you got husky pups there, and same sort of thing. And studies have shown that having a pet or stroking someone else's pet leads to a measurable decrease in stress, anxiety, that sort of condition. And could you imagine? I wonder if the same is true of fursuiters. Just imagine like going to a furmy and you've got all the fursuiters in a room. It's like, yeah, I'm feeling quite stressed at the moment. Let me just go squitch one of the suitors. What do you think, Necro? You go to a lot of furmy.
I can personally vouch for that. Every
You
time
think?
yeah, every time I go to the bowling meet, that's when I visit my house, when I visit back home. Um,
uh,
I'm always like so elated there. I think that's the right term.
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
I'll go there and I'll be even like stressed out, like just because I've got bad anxiety.
Mhm.
And I'll be driving over there, and like I'll be smoking in the car, and um, and I'll just be like, okay, what if this happens and when I'm there, or like so many thoughts will just be running through my head when I'm like
Yeah.
about the meet itself. But as soon as I get there, I see all the suitors, and I'm just like, I'm gonna hug you and you and you and you and you. And they're always
Yeah.
so friendly. They're always so friendly.
I think a lot of fursuiters, when they put the suit on, it helps them open up in a more extroverted way as well. A lot of furries tend to be quite introverted, but they almost become their character. Um, when they put on the suit, and obviously the furry characters tend to be very friendly and such. I mean, I've never had a hug from a fursuiter. I've been a furry for 16 years, never had a hug from a fursuiter. So if any of you listening see me, yeah, come hug me. I want my first fursuit hug. That would be fantastic.
Oh.
One day. One person mentioned to me a few days ago that he felt there was a danger of sort of normalization of mental illness within the furry fandom because so many furries suffer from anxiety, depression, and so forth. What do you feel about that? Do you think it is normalized within our community, or do you think that we? Well, yeah. What are your thoughts?
I think it's at that point, like the tipping point where it can go either way. Because I haven't, when I talk to people and they're like, I've got anxiety, I've got this and that, and I'll try to sympathize with them to the best of my ability, and I think that's what we need is just sort of not to normalize it, but talk to them in a way that from understanding, and I think that will sort of
I think
I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the person was afraid of was more the point that if everyone around you seems to have some sort of anxiety or depression, do you sort of just end up accepting your condition because, well, everyone else is like this, so it must be normal, so I'm not going to do anything about it? What are your thoughts on that, Clementine?
I don't really think that is very much the case. I think, well, the furry community isn't everything in one's life. Someone doesn't eat, breathe, and drink furry. They've got to deal with that mental illness that they have themselves, or just mental condition. So I don't think someone can just go by ignoring it entirely because of a group of people that also have similar afflictions.
So, for those people who aren't sort of obsessively into furry and have a healthy amount of other people around them, they might sort of see that I don't know, the non-furries are less afflicted by this stuff, and hence it would become less normalized. That's sort of the point you're making.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Does make me not so much concerned, but certainly in the case of those who are very integrated into the furry fandom, there certainly are some people like that. I wonder if normalization of mental illness is more the sort of thing that could afflict them, but it's always hard to be sure with this sort of thing. I mean, do you think that being a furry is helpful for mental health overall? Because we've got that sort of community that is that support network, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you want to go?
Sorry, I interrupted you. Go.
Okay. I think it is. I think it is helpful to be in the community if you have an affliction like that. Simply because positivity is one of the best medicines. Like if you're constantly chastised for having something, not that you can control it or not, you're not going to be able to like cope with it or deal better with it in any other way. Than if like you had friends who like accepted you for what you are and would help to accommodate for whatever it was that you're afflicted with.
Yeah, and I suppose if you are depressed and people ostracize you, then that certainly isn't going to help. So having that community of open people who will accept you and regardless of what mental conditions you've got is a very positive thing. What about you, Necro? Do you feel it's positive for your mental health being a furry?
Oh yeah, definitely. I remember I can list an example off the top of my head where, I was in a particular situation and, I basically, there, I don't want to go into too much detail about it because it's stressful and I'd rather not think about it really.
If you don't want to, you don't have to.
I mean, basically, they, I I it's hard to explain. It's like I'm getting baited into saying something that you don't believe. And then they use
Right.
that stuff against you. And I was freaking out about it because it was one of
Mhm.
the first times it's ever happened. And I
So
just,
someone was sort of manipulating you, I guess.
mm-hmm,
Mhm.
mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And, I went to, another furry and, I talked about this with them and,
Mhm.
there was unbelievable support. I can't, and, like I can't, it's just, I don't have words because there's the support that I got that, because I was terrified in that
Mhm.
moment and, it was important to me.
Yeah, yeah. Aw, can imagine. I'm glad to hear you had a friend there who was able to support you with that though. And you're out of that situation now?
Yeah.
Good, good. A lot of mental illness, especially transient mental illness, is caused by things like isolation and loneliness, as we've sort of been discussing. The furry fandom, because it's accepting and open and warm, can help with that sort of thing. And here in Furry Valley, we're founded on a holistic, strong sense of community. What things in particular do you feel that we have or that we do here that make the biggest difference, either to you personally, or do you feel are the most important to people in general with their mental health here or as a furry?
I'm not too sure how to answer this one because, excuse me, usually, if I've got like anxiety or, um, or I'm upset about something, and I've got downtime, and I'm at college where I'm not like back at home, because since I live in a dorm, I'm right across from a gym center, and I usually just go there, and that seems to help me. But in terms of Furry Valley, I'd say, you know, there's probably we've got something like an anonymous advice channel,
Yeah.
and you know I think if people because people will voice their concerns and what's on their mind in there, and I can almost guarantee that there's always at least one other person that's in here that's going through probably going through something the same, or if not very similar to what you're going through. And so there's always that emotional support, or maybe even physical support that you need.
Yeah, to sort of to share the burden, I suppose. And just briefly, for any of our listeners that are not aware of this or this is news to them, we have an anonymous advice chat, which is just called Channel Advice. If you wish to post in there, private message Furry Valley Bot and start your message with exclamation point advice, and that will post your message automatically in the advice chat anonymously, whereby a community manager or a game admin can reply to you to provide you with whatever support you may need. There are a short list of rules and instructions on how that channel should be used. If you check the pin post in the advice channel, that explains all the details you'd need. What would you say, Clementine? What do you think is the sort of the thing we do in Furry Valley that makes the biggest difference to how you may feel personally or how furries may feel generally about their mental health in terms of a community and so on?
While other people would find the massive amount of people in our group kind of dehumanizing, in a way. 3,000 people, that's a lot. um, I'd
Mhm.
find that there's a certain thing to, I'm going to sound weird here, but flesh that makes things a little bit more difficult to to get across. Like if you're talking to what for sure is a real person in front of your eyes, you're going to be more apprehensive than words on a screen where you can say anything. And people are always like, if you're mad, don't say anything on the internet. uh I I would actually like to contradict that and say, like, if you're in like a space with like a ton of people whether or not they know you, it's probably better to talk to them online, of course, than
Mhm.
someone who like could have like serious real life repercussions on you if you like like
So you feel safer talking about your problems with someone in Furry Valley than you would talking to someone in real life because you feel that if the conversation doesn't go particularly well, they're just someone on the internet.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I get you. You mentioned that Furry Valley is obviously a large community. We have 3,000 on our Discord roughly at this point. I think one thing we've always tried to keep in mind as we've grown is to make everyone feel like this is their personal home, and it's not just that they're simply one out of 3,000 people or whatever. And we try our best to do that with, for example, we always have a community manager or me as an owner, Blaze as an owner, will welcome every single new member. When you join a new section, you should also get a welcome from one of the game admins for that section. Is there anything you think that we should be doing? Obviously, you've only been here for a couple of months. Is there anything we can be doing that would make you, or that you feel would make other newer people feel like they're more personally that this is their home rather than that they're dehumanized in a sense?
Well, it wasn't really as much of it wasn't really as much of a critical statement, um, as much as it was just a statement. People are always gonna come and go. Someone you might have told
Okay.
something important to would have gone in a while. But if I did have any critical statements, uh, I'd probably just say that you know, um, uh, I need to think about this one. Probably, I don't know. There's like filtering of people
Uh-huh.
by interest, which is kind of that's a smart idea. Um, but like
So into the different categories for each game, you mean, and
yes,
such.
and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah.
just one little pet peeve that I've always had with the server. Don't ban me. Is just that like it's all on top of like the general discussion. Like it has more priority over stuff like in general. That's really the only like big problem I've had with the server.
So the sort of order of the chats, you'd rather the categories were below the other category. You'd rather general chat was at the top.
Yeah, it's easier to get to
Yeah,
that way.
a lot of people say, yeah. A lot of people say this. My counter argument has always been, well, it's the other stuff. So you've got your game categories, and then everything else that doesn't fit goes in general. So I don't know. There's arguments for both, but you're certainly not the only person who has brought this up. And don't worry, you won't get banned for
Yeah.
saying that. Necro said worse than that, and he's still here, aren't you?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So in the past few years, attitudes towards mental health conditions have thankfully been improving in the real world. Many people, though, unfortunately, still view unseen disabilities as somehow sort of far less valid than a physical disability. What do you think can be done to address this?
Well, that's obviously not the case. There's obviously terrible afflictions that people have that can halt them from doing their jobs or just living their daily life as they would otherwise.
Yeah.
Um, so I think they're just more like I don't know, more I don't want to say like governmental or like political support for them,
Mhm.
something like that. But like I don't want to say like that, but there's obviously more like things out there for people with physical disabilities to cope with, like like physical therapy or of course surgery, but that's not really that's not really
Yeah.
doable with mental illness. Um, but mainly it's
Yeah,
just go on.
I don't think that calling for regulation from the government or help in that sort of sense is a bad thing. You know, if they were to bring out more programs, more laws for equality for mental disability and physical disability, that could be what's needed.
That's
Often businesses will cut corners if they can, just to try to improve their profit margins and such.
yeah,
Maybe it does need regulation.
that's what I was mainly referring to. I just didn't want to like
Mhm.
make it sound like a government thing, so that the
Well,
conversation didn't go political.
yeah, I get you. I get you. What about you, Necro?
I hate to say this, but you could repeat the question.
So I was basically saying in the past few years, we've seen some improvements in how people view mental health conditions on an equal level to physical health conditions, but there's still a lot of progress to be made. What do you think needs to be done to address that and to further improve the situation?
Uh, I'd say I definitely agree with that first statement, where that we've made tremendous strides in terms of recognizing that mental disabilities or mental disorders are equivalent to physical disorders and disabilities. But I also agree that we still have a long way to go. But as in terms of what we could do, um, I wouldn't know the answer to that. Like, there's so much about the human mind or the human brain that we don't know. And because, just for an example, like, my sister, the one I was talking about, she can only be on a certain type of medication because we've tried every single other type of medication, and my mom has been on the phone with the pharmacies for weeks at a time, where they have tried to give her the generic brand, which, for those of you that don't know, like, a generic brand of medication is sort of a cheaper way to make the medication or to produce it, but it still does the exact same thing. The only difference, I think, is there's a slight difference in the structure of, like, how the molecules are. And like, she can't have the generic brand of the medication because it just doesn't work, and we've tried, and they've tried time and time again to put her on it, and the official brand is the only thing that actually works for her. So
I guess with you saying obviously the human mind is vastly complex and hence mental health disorders are vastly complex. So I suppose what you're getting at is that
I
not
think
only is regulation required for equality, but you also want some sort of more education so that employers and people in the wider world are more aware of these conditions and the impacts they can have on a person, like the real impacts. Because it's easy to say you're depressed, stop being sad, and there are an unfortunate number of people who say these things, and you wouldn't say to a person in a wheelchair, "Oh, just stand up," right? But it's the same sort
yeah,
of thing, and perhaps education would help with that.
yeah, and I think if we can understand, like, more about the human mind, it would make great
Yeah,
strides as
yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. But as you say, vastly complex, vastly complex.
Mhm.
It's not brain science. Well, thank you guys. That's the questions I have prepared. So let's move now to what our live audience and people earlier have left in our podcast channel on our Discord. And just to call anyone who's here, if you would like to ask a question or just have some thoughts discussed with our guest tonight, please do leave them in the podcast text channel, which is available in the community section just below the movie night channel. Our first question from the audience comes from Floof, and he asks, or he says rather, I've noticed that a large number of the furry community suffer from mental health issues. What do you think is the correlation between the fandom and mental health issues such as autism and depression? In his opinion, he feels like it's how welcoming the community is and that animals make a good safe space for people with autism and depression. What are your thoughts on that?
I think he's got it like right on the dot there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think suggesting a correlation, to begin with, might sound disrespectful at first, like,
Mm-hmm.
being a furry turns you autistic or something. Uh, that's that's obviously not the case. I agree, like, almost completely. Yeah, completely with everything they've said. But I do think it's a interesting point to bring up how, like, animals in general, um, kind of like bring in like peace of mind, sound of mind. Like, there've almost always been therapy dogs.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One thing that I think our government in the UK is pushing at the moment is having therapy dogs for people with anxiety, and this sort of goes back to the research that has been done showing that anxiety and stress levels decrease when you have a pet, and it's not currently supported by the government, but hopefully within the next 24 months we'll see support for that. Yeah, that would be fantastic. I'd love a doggo just to keep me less anxious myself.
I have actually seen a few videos like that, where people will
What, dogs for anxiety?
panic disorders. They'll have
Uh-huh.
like PTSD, or they'll have like the panic attack,
Yeah.
and they have service dogs for that. I've seen a few
Yeah.
videos on it, and it's really cool because like the description will say, right as soon as the dog, my service dog, started to be so affectionate to me, like I was just about to have a panic attack, and I could tell because lo and behold, like I think it was like they said something like a minute later, like I had one of my known triggers that would have triggered that panic attack. And it's really amazing just to see like how much that helps.
Yeah. Next we have Seradath, who says, being in the furry fandom has a strong dichotomy from internally being generally overly friendly and affectionate, to those outside being generally highly toxic and opposed to those in the fandom. How do you think this affects those with socially based mental health issues?
Is this sort of in terms of how do I put this? You're gonna have to come back to me
I think
because there's two ways
perhaps
that I can
if
interpret this.
yeah, okay, well we can move on for now. Tactical asks, as a follow-up to Seradath's question, he says the furry community has generally different social norms to outside the furry community. For example, relationships between furries can be easier because furries are naturally very open with each other and can be very intimate with each other very soon after meeting. Does the speed at which this happens ultimately have an effect on a person's mental health in terms of whether they become clingy or codependent on another person?
I'd say so, yes, because I actually do have experience with this. My ex, the relationship moved very, very, very fast. And I think it was in the span of like 3 months he had already proposed to me, and
Gosh.
um, yeah, we still
What did you
talk.
say?
Um, I did say yes,
uh-huh.
but the situation delves so much deeper than I'm leading on, and
Yeah, yeah,
we still talk, we still interact with each other, and I still love him, but the relationship was moving so fast to where it was actually affecting me,
yeah, yeah.
where I would try and distance myself from basically everything. There was a huge disconnect that
So
started
you didn't
after.
really
So
have enough personal space, personal time.
yeah, so I'd say that definitely the speed at which relationships move is very
Too
important.
much sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Paco mentions there is a higher incidence of mental health problems in the furry fandom than external to the furry fandom. Do you think this is because the furry fandom generates mental health problems, or because it is a refuge sought by those already suffering from them?
Oh, this is we've talked about this extensively, um, to a point, of course. Mainly, it's just because it is the refuge.
Yeah,
You can't really generate a mental health problem depending on what it is, of course.
yeah, yeah,
Just by
yeah.
being somewhere you can't, like I said, catch autism. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Much as some claim you can catch autism from vaccines and that sort of nonsense, but yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people who become furries seek refuge in the fandom have been bullied and ostracized by those around them, and those suffering from mental health conditions tend to be in the same boat. And so it's perhaps no surprise that they come together and converge in a common place where they find that acceptance, because of course that's comforting and you're your conditions, if they're relating to isolation, will be helped by having that community and support. Let me have a scroll down and see if I can find some questions that aren't basically the same thing.
Yeah, they're all
pretty similar.
Yeah. There's a lot of them.
Okay, this one to you, Clementine. From Seradath, how do you feel the furry fandom helps or hinders those with body or gender dysphoric issues with relation to the culture being somewhat centered on making a persona that they aren't able to live up to?
Well, of course, with the persona bit, oh my god, I don't think that the don't live up to it is very realistic. I mean, there are people who make Mary Sue as characters who are perfect in every way, but most people see their character, their persona, as a reflection of themselves or just an extension. And while there are things that they wish they could be, a lot of these can be attained through effort. Some of them can, some of them can. But other than that, like, I know I've made a character who I aspire to be. Of course, I play a female always, but that's just about the gist.
I think much as I love my lion to bits, I'm never going to be a lion. So I think we can all aspire to at least be what our characters personify and the way they behave, the way they act.
Of course.
But yeah, you're never gonna.
Of course, this is referring to personality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Next we have Cinnabunny, who asks, he's got two questions. The first question is, given that many furries use their personas as entirely different personalities to act like someone they are not in real life, do you think that getting more attention to one's persona than one's real self can make the person feel like his or her self-worth is tied to their character and not one's self? I think this isn't the case. Sort of what you were discussing there, Clementine. A lot of people do. Perhaps their character isn't quite a reflection of themselves, but it's certainly who they aspire to be. And following on from what you just said for that last point, for the last question, I think that if you can see and perceive that character that you wish to become more like, then you would find the journey to becoming more like that easier than if you didn't have that sort of visualization. And so I don't think it's that people create fantastical characters that are nothing like what they are and nothing like what they want to be. I would say it was certainly more like what you said in response to the last question. Do you feel that there are many people who create personas that are just really different?
Well, here's a funny topic, because I've been in a role play community for years now, since probably before I decided I wanted to set on writing. And there's always gonna be people who are gonna like be God, if that makes makes any sense. But I do think that they are just a loud minority.
Yeah. So these people who sort of god mod in role plays and are faultless, then I suppose if you were to aspire to be perfect, no one's ever going to be perfect, and so you could end up falling down that. But yeah, I agree that is a minority, thankfully, because they're not much fun to role play with. Never going to have much of a scene with those people. Next we have Mr. Smoke. Let me say his first question is not really related. His second question, though, he asks, as someone struggling with PTSD and anxiety, do you think those with mental disabilities should be treated differently to others? I think that it's just obviously, of course, they shouldn't be. But the reality of the world, sort of coming back to our point on physical versus mental disabilities, even in the disabled community, those with mental issues aren't treated equally to those with physical issues of a comparable nature. And it's often what should be the case in life isn't the case in life, and it's a sad truth, but living your life based on idealistic propositions is not healthy when the reality doesn't reflect that. And you can do things to your reality by, for example, polling for your government to put in proper regulation and such that will make it closer to what it should be. But acting like it is when it isn't is often going to lead to problems.
Yeah, I agree with that too. The way things shouldn't be. While people are all for equality, there's a I've been reading a book lately called Fahrenheit 451. Everyone's
Oh
probably
yeah,
read it in high school, but essentially, if everyone's the same, that means that everyone will be accommodated for the same.
yeah,
Which simply can't be the truth, because if you have something like really, really serious, like more serious than like autism, not that it's not serious, like one of the harsher ends of the spectrum.
yeah. If you've got no arms and
Yeah,
legs,
or
let's say
just
that that's pretty
low
serious.
functioning anything.
Yeah,
Then some people are going to have to make accommodations for you. They're going to have to treat you a little different, even if it is positively towards you. But yeah, it's unrealistic to want to reach a treat everyone the same situation.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's difficult. We have a number of questions from an anonymous person from Telegram now. His first question is, how should he deal with jealousy in a relationship? This is.
I mean, I've never been in a relationship, so I think Necro would be better at this.
I think definitely one thing I would say, not just from my relationship, previous relationship, but just from like comics I've read that that portray like sort of a long-term relationship, um, is to definitely talk it out. It's hard, and it's scary, it's terrifying. I didn't do it with my ex, and I didn't really talk, so, or we didn't communicate, I guess, as often as we should have. And I think that's one of the reasons why it failed, is definitely is because I didn't tell him that, hey, we're moving too fast, like I can't do this.
Yeah,
And and it's definitely important to talk to the other person about how you feel. And you can another important note is that you can never ever let your emotions get the best of you when you are talking it out, because um, it's never a good thing if it's getting heated. If the discussion's getting heated, it would be wise to take like half an hour, an hour, a day off of from talking about it. And
yeah,
because it's just, talking is about important things are hard, and jealousy is one of those
yeah.
important things. And
I think one other reason why talking and communicating when jealousy is an issue is so important is because you might be jealous of something and you might have a problem with something that when you bring it up to your partner, they will say, "Well, why are you worried? What is there a problem?" They may not even be aware that you have an issue with jealousy about a situation. And if you keep it to yourself, you may make it into a ginormous mountain of a problem, where if you speak to your partner, they'll just say, "Oh, that's no problem, I'll just fix it then." And so you can cause yourself a lot of strife and worry over a long period of time by suffering in silence. And I think, as you say, that doesn't just apply to jealousy, but any problems within a relationship where you don't want to talk to your partner because you might not know how they react and stuff. You'll generally find that the sooner you bring up a problem, and then this is true in work, it's true in social relationships, everything, not just relationships with your significant other, you bring up a problem early, you tend to be able to fix it quite easily. If you brush a problem under the rug for 3 months, then hey, look, you've got a big problem to deal with. So yeah, I would say communication is really important with this. And realizing that things are very rarely as bad as you think they are if you bring them up quickly. Never hide problems. The anonymous person's questions are mostly the same, just reworded for the rest of them. And the basic premise is, how do I deal with self-esteem, self-confidence issues, self-belief issues? He mentions that he thinks his mind is his own worst enemy and it eats away at him. And one thing that not just furries, but people in general that I know don't seem to get is that self-esteem, self-confidence, self-belief is self, it's not external. Most people try to make friends and they try to find other people to accept them and to love them because they think that that's going to make them feel like they value themselves. The idea being, well, I have value because other people see value in me. But that's not how self-esteem works, and you'll realize that even if you have 5,000 people who love you, you'll always doubt yourself because you don't necessarily believe it. Your belief is based off only what others have given you, and other people, even if you think you know a person super well and you've known them for a very long time, people are way too often transient. I had a guy who was arguably one of my best friends for 12 years or something, and over the course of 24 hours he basically went from that history with me to never wanting to speak to me again. And if that can happen with a person who's been around for literally more than half of your life, been that close with you, then you can't ever rely on another person to provide your self-esteem, to provide your self-confidence, because when they're gone, what are you left with? So you have to construct that for yourself. You have to have this unshakable, strong, central pillar within you that is your strength, and other people, sure, they can value you and appreciate you, and you can add that to what you've got, but it can't be everything, or you're setting yourself up to fall. So I would say, for these sorts of issues with self-esteem, self-confidence, when you're your own worst enemy, focus on you, focus on what you think about you, and really learn to love yourself. Because you can't get it from other people, and it might take you years to develop it. But once you have developed it, you will realize that no matter what anyone thinks of you, no matter what anyone does to you, or says to you, or how they treat you, you will always have it, and you'll always feel strong, and you won't be able to be broken by anyone else, because you'll always have your own internal comfort, if you will. That's that's my thoughts on that.
Just to add on that, like what you were saying, I think it's also really important that to, I guess, with at least with me, what I do is I make little scenarios in my head where like at least in terms of self-esteem and self-worth and self-love, I put these little scenarios in my head where what if all of a sudden like I had nothing, I had no one, I had no friends, they all just sort of up and left for some unknown forsaken reason. What do I still have? And I came to the conclusion that my education is something that I've very much valued because it's something I've loved doing. I want to work with animals, like really bad. It's something I'm very passionate about, and so I sort of told myself, come hell or high water, if I lose my education, like I'll fight tooth and nail to get that back. And I know that it will sort of lead to a because sure, like at the time, like I'll be, oh, I don't have my education, like what else could go wrong, like this day can't possibly get any worse sort of mindset. And if I fight tooth and nail for that, I know that everything will come come around eventually because I'll have my education. It's sort of
Yeah. So it
way of
enables you to
thinking.
sort of take care of yourself into the future if you get your education. Yeah, education's important. We're coming up to the hour mark now, so I'm just going to ask a couple more questions of the ones that have been left. So, Paco asks, what plans does Furry Valley have for the future to further help members with mental health issues? The most, the one that's going to come first is the buddy system, which we have the structure for at the moment. A lot of people who join Furry Valley, especially because it's getting quite large now, say that they feel like they're not quite sure how to fit in or they're shy. They don't want to talk in general one because, there's a lot of people. So what we're going to do is implement a system whereby everyone with the fluff rank or higher will be able to choose to be a buddy. And when a new member joins Furry Valley, they will be offered if they want to be paired up with a buddy. And that person will integrate them in the community, be that in the game sections they play, or on voice chat, or just in general one to sort of keep an eye on them for the first few weeks that they're here and make sure that it becomes their personal home as well as just help them settle in. Makes sense. We have a question from Spiderot. Spiderot asks, is there something you look forward to when you log on to Furry Valley for the day? Whether it's just the Discord server itself, chatting, gaming with people, what is it that gets you most excited for this community? Clementine.
Oh, this is an easy one. I could make a terrible joke here.
Well, please do.
Oh no, you wouldn't want me to.
Okay, don't then.
Well, let's just say it's a different server now.
Uh-huh.
Well, but the real reason would probably just be there's a lot of variety. There's a lot of things to do, of course. With such a large base of users, on top of other things, there's a meme channel, of course. That's a given, but there's also like bots and stuff, and the bots can do interesting things. It's really nice. I guess on a technical level, there's like, if you don't want to talk, you can't talk. There's other things. If you can talk, there's a surplus of people to do it. Like you're not going to have a similar conversation twice with the same people in like multiple settings each and every time. Of course.
So it's the sort of variety you like, and the structure of our community, I guess you like.
Yeah.
Cool. What about you, Necro?
Interactions with the other furries here. I think that hands down wins.
So the sort of social life of the server.
Yeah. I always go into voice chat, and it's always fun for me to talk to everyone else, even though it might not seem like it. At least over voice, I'm elated that, even if no one's talking, I'll be elated that, at least someone else is in the chat room with me, because you don't need to really talk to, have fun. At least my personal.
And whenever I join, you go, Simba!
That I do.
Simba!
Cute. Very cute indeed. Very cute. I think that's all we've got time for, but thank you very much to both our guests, Necro and Clementine.
Thank you.
Actually, really quickly, I want to go back to Sarah's question.
Which one was this, Necro?
It was one of the first ones. How do you feel? Was it? Well, that wasn't it.
He's got a question higher up about people inside the fandom being affectionate, outside being toxic. Is that one you mean?
Yeah.
We can edit this afterwards. Don't worry.
Yeah. I feel that, from the outside looking, it's a two-way street, really. Where from people that aren't furries, to people that are, and both being, toxic, to the inside, I feel that can have, a negative impact on people with mental health issues, because there'll be even by just like association, and I've felt this too on some level. I felt a little bit of guilt or shame, and oh, I'm actually a furry, but that's such a small detail. And I always remind myself that I've got so many people, so many furries that are surround me with love and kindness, and
well,
it's sort of a pick me up. But in terms of the other side is
there's always one dickhead, isn't there? Go on, Necro.
Great.
is the other side about this is people being overly friendly or affectionate. I think that that can have a positive effect, both on the outside and in, because the more positivity, you can never have too much positivity, I guess, unless it leads to overconfidence in some negative way. I don't know. There is such a thing as too much, but in terms of being friendly and affectionate with the furry fandom,
You think we have a good amount?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I think slowly but surely people will accept furries, because I've opposed to like 5 years ago. I've definitely, and now I've definitely noticed, a big difference for the better.
Good. Okay. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you again to both our guests, Necro and Clementine. It was a pleasure spending time with you both, getting to know you a little bit better this evening. And thank you as well to everyone who came in our audience. Apologise that we couldn't get to all your questions. Thank you again, everyone. I should hope we answered most of them. And take care.